This video is sponsored by MPB.
I am going to live and breathe insect photography for an entire week to see if I can go from complete beginner to developing a slither, an inch of skill and understanding.
Gear I'm using in this video: my Nikon Z30, either my Sigma 105 macro lens or my Laowa 100mm 2x macro lens, and a Godox flash with a diffuser.
Just as with other genres of photography, the technical stuff, the in-camera settings, the gear is important, but what is just as important is the in-field technique. So I guess step one, I need to find an insect. Can't be too difficult, right?
When I normally shoot macro, my subject may be a little tricky to spot at times, but once I find them, they don't exactly fly away. This time though, I knew things would be different. My approach had to be slow, careful enough not to scare anything away, and it was pretty clear that part of the learning curve would be figuring out which bugs are super skittish and which ones will let me get close.
So I'm looking for insects in places that's going to be comfortable for me to sort of get my setup in. So sort of eye level and places where I can kneel easily, because this is going to be difficult enough as it is without having to contort my body in order to get near an insect as well. So I'm trying to make it, I moved, comfortable for myself. There is a shield bug on these leaves and it is pretty active, and every so often the wind just sort of picks everything up. But if I can get a photo of it, I'll be pretty happy.
Insect photography really demands stealth, a slow, patient approach so you don't startle them.
Oh, it's gone.
But also just fast enough to grab a few frames before they scurry, fly, or crawl away. I know that as I go deeper into this, I'll naturally learn more about insect behaviour. But right now, my focus was just on getting the basics down, building those fundamental skills to get to the point where I don't have to think about every little step. That way, eventually, I can shift more attention to things like composition, creativity, and my background.
So to focus for subjects, instead of turning the focusing ring, which I'm setting my magnification, which is what I'm doing now, and then I'm using the rocking technique back and forth, using the viewfinder to frame up my subject, and then rocking gently back and forth until I'm in focus, and then using burst mode to try and get a shot that is sharp. And it's not easy, most of the images come out blurry, but if you're lucky, you'll get one. And what I'm doing is I'm reviewing the images straight away afterwards to make sure that I have a sharp image. So if the bug is still here, I can try again.
Seeing as macro photography can be done anywhere, I decided to stay closer to home for some early morning practice, which had its own challenges and distractions.
The doorbell just went. Why are you licking my tripod? I'm not even attempting to focus bracket during this video as the insects are wiggling around. I'm moving because I'm handheld and can't stay still. And of course we've got the wind in here as well, just keeping me on my toes. And this is where something like a mirrorless camera is more ideal, because they can focus bracket. Something like the OM system can focus bracket so much faster than my 850 can. So instead, because depth of field is razor thin, I'm using smaller apertures to squeeze in a tiny bit more focus into each shot. A fair amount of my subject will still fall out of focus, and I may bring some more detail of the background elements in slightly, but hey, this is macro photography and that's just one of the trade-offs.
One thing I tried here was simply standing further back from the subject, accepting that I would have to crop later in post. Thankfully, with 45 megapixels, it's not really much of a problem. The most important thing to remind myself was that I'm not aiming for perfection. Instead, the goal is to build confidence so that I can move on to more advanced techniques. I love these images, but it would have been great to experiment more with the background. Although the black creates contrast and helps colours stand out, I also want some more natural tones to come through as well.
Of course, this means that I need to just experiment more with my flash and camera settings, maybe even bring in other tools such as these background coloured cards, and learn to coordinate all of these things on location.
I regularly watch and learn from other macro photographers like Stuart Wood, Jamie Spenceley, Emily Talpin, and others, which has taught me a lot.
But no matter how much you learn from other people, there is always still going to be that in-field learning process where you practice applying the information that you know until it becomes ingrained as muscle memory and it's second nature.
Day 3 was more in-field practice, which demanded a lot of concentration and patience. I was essentially scouting, trying to find hot spots I could come back to over and over when there was an abundance of insects. Some spots just didn't seem to have much happening in them. It was hard not to be frustrated at times when you finally found something and it flew away, when it was easy to lose the subject in the viewfinder, when I just couldn't nail the focus, or when my arms got tired, because honestly, this setup with a flash on top is kind of heavy after a while.
There are loads and loads of grasshoppers in this area. However, they're so shy and skittish that I cannot physically get close enough to one to nab a photo, which is unfortunate. Anyway, the bulkiness, the heaviness of my camera setup, this comes up often in my comment section, emails, messages, and I get it. I personally do not feel like it's extremely heavy or it's too bulky most of the time. For my landscape photography and photographing stationary subjects, it doesn't bother me. I'm either using a tripod and my camera bag is incredibly supportive, so I don't feel like my camera bag is ridiculously heavy. However, this handheld setup is absolutely insane. It is a monster setup. And I'm definitely feeling the weight of this. For this kind of photography, I have developed a preference for the OM system, and I am going to, in the very near future, invest in an OM1 Mark II probably, and a macro kit for it, just so that handheld will be a little more comfortable, handheld shooting, and I can get myself into more awkward, tighter spots as well with the camera. And I won't go into too much detail about this right now because it's not necessary, but for now, stuck with the monster setup.
I would just like to take a moment to thank MPB for sponsoring today's video.
I'm a little concerned. I only bought a macro lens. Why is the box so big.
When I'm looking to add something to my camera bag, usually for my macro obsession or filming equipment, MPB is my go-to platform for used kit. I recently bought a longer focal length macro lens and sold my spare flash that I didn't need through MPB's trade-in service. I did a quick instant quote to see how much it was worth, and chose the lens that I wanted to buy. It only took a few minutes to arrange shipping the flash to MPB, and off it went. After a few days, MPB's team of experts had approved the flash, and once I had paid the difference, they had shipped my lens out to me. I find MPB's service, whether I'm buying, trading in, or just selling, completely easy, so hassle-free, which is why I recommend them to photographers and videographers, and continue to use them myself. If you'd like to check them out, I'll leave the link to MPB down in the description box, and thank you MPB for continuing to support this channel.
So today's goal is to try and get some photos of butterflies, dragonflies, bees, that kind of thing. I've also switched to 150mm macro lens today to give myself a few more centimeters of working distance, which doesn't sound a lot, but I'm curious to see if it does make a difference, because at this point I haven't been able to get close to bees, dragonflies, butterflies without scaring them away. Now, some macro photographers claim that if a subject is skittish, it's going to be skittish, no matter if you have a 150mm on, a 100mm on, a 200mm macro lens on. So I thought I would test this out myself. I'm walking around the edge of two ponds, and usually this area is teeming with dragonflies and such. However, I have yet to come across a single one. I mean, perhaps I'm not in the macro mindset of seeing right now, and I'm just being completely blind, but I'm genuinely falling over sticks and genuinely not seeing anything. So there are quite a few dragonflies in this area here. However, at this point, we're in midday light, which is very harsh, but also they are incredibly active. And they're skittish if I move, but if I stay pretty still, they're not afraid of getting close to me. And they're settling here and there for a couple of seconds, but then when I move, they're gone. So I'm going to try and be as slow and still as possible and very patient. See if I can get even just a basic, simple image of a dragonfly.
In this case, the added working distance felt less intrusive and generally more comfortable. That said, I quickly came to agree with the many photographers that say that focal length doesn't matter much when your subject is likely to move.
So a very lovely lady has just pointed me in the direction of apparently a dried up pond or puddle that has some rather large damselflies hanging around it. So I'm going to go and see if I can find it and check it out.
They were actually really big dragonflies, and they were too fast and far away to successfully photograph. I think a different time of day and maybe even a telephoto lens would have worked better. Day 5 and 6 were more about practice, not just in taking photos, but in observing insect patterns and behaviours. And that's the thing with this kind of photography. The deeper you immerse yourself in nature, the better your instincts become. You start to anticipate when to take a shot, where a subject may be, And all of that gives you an advantage before you've even lifted the camera. I can't say that I've got to that point yet, but it really makes me admire the depth of knowledge and skill that experienced photographers have developed over time to consistently capture stunning images.
I have spotted what might be a shield bug, I'm not sure. I've lost it now on one of the leaves on this branch. Ah, there you are. And it's hiding. I'm going to try and get a photo of it. I actually tried inset photography many years ago when I was more of a sort of casual, photography was a hobby for me, and I didn't stick with it because I wasn't particularly invested in the technical side of things, and I was happy just to take the odd photo of anything and everything every now and again with my camera. Now I am far more invested in photography. I pretty much live and breathe it. And it kind of feels as though I've gone full circle from photographing anything and everything to leaning heavily on landscape photography, and now going back to exploring other forms of nature photography. However, this time around, I like to think that I have more knowledge, more patience, and a deeper understanding for the process of photography and for nature. Well, it has certainly been interesting, and I think it's really added a new dimension to my macro photography and to the forest as well. It kind of feels like a natural progression. But I have a few goals now that I'd like to tick off in the future, photograph things like grasshoppers, bees, dragonflies a bit more successfully, and complete a focus bracket, focus stack at some point as well. Anyway, that is enough of me. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and I'll see you next time. I am far too aware right now of all the potential insects, creepy crawlies around the forest floor. Yep, this has definitely changed forest mapping. Not in a good way either.